welcome back to this NPTEL course on ESD, Education for Sustainable Development. So, today we will discuss a new topic, that is SDG 11, that is about sustainable cities and communities. Let us come to this, some of these pictures, images of what the sustainable cities and communities look like. As you can see, these are some of the clips of sustainable cities and communities, and how this SDG 11 is also related to other SDGs like SDG 4, SDG SDG 1, 2, SDG plant, land on life, marine life, climate change, almost every here you can say 12, almost 10 to 12 SDGs it is related to. So, now we will discuss about the core concepts of sustainable cities and communities. What are the primary factors, how it is getting affected, and what is role in achieving the sustainable development and growth across the globe. So, in global context. So, now let us discuss about the basic concepts about the causes of, we can say, the reasons of unsustainable cities or unsustainable communities, and from these reasons then we will go to the factors of sustainable cities and the communities. Now, so everything that we need in our environment for our survival, for well-being, it primarily definitely depends on our natural environment. Natural environment consists of natural resources, plants, animals, everything, the ecosystem, the complete ecosystem and environment. So, it's a open secret, it's a known factor. Okay. So, however, to pursue sustainability, to create and maintain that conditions, conditions in which we can coexist with other organisms, and the coexist with the environment, the other environmental factors like greenery, other animal planet and the plants, everything. So, we can coexist with them in a very productive way, in a very harmonious way, so that our environment, our ecosystem will be restored, will be conserved, will be restored for the future generation as well. So, environment in terms of the resources, in terms of habitation, quality of habitation, all kinds of things, amenities, facilities. So, how can we coexist harmoniously with our environment and various other organisms of the environment, and how can this we can sustain this kind of environment, ecosystem, and maintain that conditions for the future generation as well. So, this is the primary focus of SDG 11. So, that is definitely, so all of us we have to put the environmental factor in the as the forefront, at the forefront. That means, we should give the priority to the environmental factors here. So, that is the main factor. What would be the objectives? How to minimize the inputs, like how to minimally use, minimally exploit, how to minimize the inputs of or the uses of energy, water, food, etc. How to, yes, definitely in order to survive we have to use these resources, but anyway without wasting, how can we minimize these resources, like food, water, energy, etc. At the same time, how can we reduce the waste outputs, like in terms of heat, in terms of pollution, in terms of waste, and how to manage the waste. So, how to minimize the inputs or resources with the minimum resource depletion, and again how to reduce the wastage that can directly affect the environment in terms of pollution, in terms of heat, in terms of other kinds of exploitations. So, that is why the SDG 11 actually focuses on achieving the sustainable cities and the communities across the globe, and to reduce, primary focus will be to reduce the adverse effects of the natural disasters and the climate change and the global warming, all these kinds of, because of these kind of causal factors, how to minimize, how to reduce, and how to mitigate this kind of natural disasters. Some of the disasters are also man-made disasters. So, how to mitigate these kind of disasters and making our environment more green and giving opportunity for our people to to have the green space, eco-friendly practices of not only products, not only products, but also other kinds of amenities. How, that means to ensure that how it, all these things, all these our lifestyle, our habitat, our consumption, etc., how would it minimize the resource exploitation, and minimize the pollution, minimize the damage to the environment, and whatever waste and pollutions or the carbon footprints are being produced as a result of these consumptions. So, how can we minimize it, how can we reduce it, and how can we go for more more energy efficient ways, more green energy, more clean energy, more renewable energy, and more, you can say, waste management, all kinds of practices, so that we can restore and make our cities more sustainable, more futuristic, and more environment friendly or eco friendly. So, as you can see, these are the some of the clips, like you can see, this is the image of a very good ideal city, or the sustainable city, where energy, that means minimum energy uses in terms of eco friendly green energy, and wherever it is possible the transports are also being arranged in a eco friendly way, as minimum opportunities, minimum scope of pollution. So, again greenery and solar energy and all water and water connection, water connectivity, power system, all these things, what are the minimum. So, public transport to to the public transport, to the energy, to the water conservation, and clean water, waste management, everything, all these things comes under the purview of SDG 11. So, what we were required to do, what we need to do. So, we have to adopt, we have to incorporate eco-friendly practices, okay. Practices like creating more and more green space, supporting technology for urban planning, and to reduce the air pollution, zero carbon emission, carbon neutrality, enhance the air quality, and protect the natural resources. So, through technology also we can restore, we can revive the atmosphere, the environment in a very sustainable way. So, these practices can lead us towards a healthier environment. So, that in this way the primary objective is to how to reverse back the climate change, reverse global climate change, because of which we are very frequently we are facing these natural disasters, man-made disasters, all kind of calamities, even pandemics, so and so. So, how to reduce all these things. So, in this way, so definitely a sustainable city and urban area, urban centered, that means city urban planning, or the, you can say, sustainable city and sustainable community, etc. Definitely it improves the environmental impact through urban planning and logistic and management. So, here, so the topic of the issue of the urban planning, how sustainably we can plan our cities in a very sustainable way. So urban planning, urban city architectures, managements, amenities, these are very important factors. So, here so automatically technology definitely helps us. So, here the green technology is a key factor, okay, that helps us in fostering more and more sustainable sustainable urban development. So, green technology there now, it is more of green technology is the key factor in enhancing the quality of life and developing and building the sustainable cities and communities. So, definitely, so here definitely, so the green technology definitely helps us in city planning. So, what does the main factor, what is the city planning includes? What does the city plan includes? That it includes transportation, public transportation, private transportation, infrastructure, basic amenities, telecommunication, energy, and it also health facilities, food. So, you can say within the city, like our access to hospitals, health facilities, then food security and food stocks, then our water, then energy. These are the important factors for our survival. Transport, communication, then again energy, primary energy. So, all these, and again at the same time air quality also, air quality. So, how to reduce the pollution, how waste management, again in the urban cities lot of wastes are being created because of the overpopulation, crowded stakeholders, crowded consumers and customers. So, how to minimize, how to manage waste management is the biggest challenge you can see in every every big city or the cosmopolitan or the urban cities. So, that is so this how through green technology how can we reduce all these side effects, reduce these negative impacts, and how can we enhance not only our living conditions, but our cities, our homes, our places, and create more and more greenery pieces. So, just planting the trees like to reduce the carbon is not just the only way and only approach to enhance the greenery, but there are also we can use extensively the technology to reduce other kinds of side effects and the negative impacts. So, here as you can see how to make the cities and human settlements more inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. So, here besides the environmental factors, besides the amenities and the facilities etc., again we have to make it more inclusive, like in the cities all the stakeholders, all types of all age groups of citizens are there, children from the children to aging parents to the working professional to labor communities to the housewives, all kinds of, that is why we have to make it more inclusive. That means every citizen gets his freedom, gets his minimum, gets his or her minimum facility to enrich his living conditions. So, it should be more inclusive in nature, safe, yes, safe for all categories of citizens, safe for aged people, safe for old citizens, safe for the women, safe for the children. So, safety is another factor. So, these are the factors we can say of the urban cities, the sustainable cities. The first thing is that the cities and facilities are, it should be inclusive in nature, that it should provide the equal access and opportunity to every stakeholder, every customer, every individual living in that city, and the safety is another, resilient. Whatever disasters, what are the shortcomings, what are the shocks, what are the scarcities, what are the things are coming up, how the system is so resilient. Like for example, we can say Japan is, you can say, earthquake prone or the natural disaster prone city, but however they have built up the technology, developed the technology and built up their buildings and cities in such a resilient manner that they can you can say they can bear with all kinds of the natural disaster etc., and come back to the new, because they have used sustainable technology to build that cities. So, that we have to develop the resilient infrastructure to fight back all these kind of calamities and the natural disasters. So, resilient system and then again sustainable in that renewable things are there. Sustainable is that means there is no scarcity of resources, the resources will be created more and more, can be conserved and can be renewed. So, you can see the sustainable cities basic features can be, it should be inclusive, satisfying the needs of all the stakeholders. Safety is another important factor, resilient infrastructure in terms of absorbing the shock, in terms of fighting back to any kind of disaster, calamity etc., and sustainable for, because it will be it will be sustainable for the future generation, in the sense of not only conserving the resources, but also creating the new ways of renewable energy, renewable things like the water. Water is water scarcity, that is a very common factor in urban cities. But again, how can we explore the other scope and opportunities and the platforms of either saving water or sustainably using water, or you can distribution of water. So, that is another thing. Similarly, energy distribution. Pollution control, whatever pollution pollution is being created through wind, through through waste, through other kinds of things usage. How can we process it, reprocess it? So, waste management, how can we manage it? Not only will reduce the volume and intensity of the pollution, but also we can explore a better way of minimizing the pollution. So, through technology. So, that is you can say these are some of the characteristic features of sustainable cities. For example, like cities can do a number of things to support the sustainable practices. What are these practices? How can we minimize at least the pollution, minimize the resource depletion, like make it easy to get around without a car. Like for example, you can take all the planned cities and the campuses etc., like for our living campuses, instead of taking the car and using the automobiles, petrol based or diesel based automobiles, how if you can minimize this kind of air pollution through through moving through bicycle, through walking, all kinds of. So, make it easy to go around without a car. If it is a within the reach short distance, within the short distance, then we can instead of using this four wheelers or the automobiles, we can use the cycles and the other kinds of, or walking, etc., as a means of transport. Similarly, add to the EV charging stations are there. So, nowadays more battery chargeable hydrogen cars and the battery chargeable electric cars are coming up. So, there must be the facilities for the frequent charging system in the community. So, provide the access to public resources and the green spaces even within the city also. How can we better use the space with the more greenery, wherever the opportunity and the space is there, how can we plant the greenery, so to create more kind of purify the air quality through more creation of more oxygen, etc. So, similarly improve the water conservation and the wastewater management in the cities, big cities. Then how this wastewater can be managed and can be converted to the different technological mechanisms are there, weed treatment or other kinds of things to process it, and again improve the water conservation, either rainwater harvesting and other ways and means of conserving the water, conserving the, you can say, sweet water. So, drinking water. So, support the urban farming implement the green architecture. So, nowadays urban farming has also taken up the status of a very important factor, like roof farming, roof gardening, roof farming, and city farming. These are also these have come up in the big way, not only to ensure, or not only to help us in creating or managing our household consumptions in terms of rooftop gardening, in terms of vegetables, in terms of fruits, in terms of etc., but at the same time to enhance the greenery of the cities, to compensate whatever the carbon footprints are that we are incurring in the daily day-to-day life. So, urban farming, then green architecture of then primarily this how can you make our buildings more greenery with by introducing some kinds of rooftop garden, rooftop agriculture, some of the greenery, some agriculture, some kitchen gardens, So, how to promote this rooftop farming and agriculture, green architecture is also the slogan of these sustainable cities and the communities. So, here can say, so sustainable in cities and the communities also, that means it has been advocated by the World Bank, and now since last 10 to 12, since 2015 onwards, we can say risk management, disaster risk management, resilience and the land global practices, it has become the key dimensions of sustainable cities and communities as being advocated by the World Bank. So, therefore, we can say, first of all, sustainable communities should be environmentally sustainable in terms of its energy efficiency, in terms of its water sufficiency, in terms of cleanliness, in terms of safety, in terms of waste management, all these things, these are the priority areas. Similarly, secondly, the community the society should be very much resilient to social, economic and natural shocks. Like during the pandemic, economic shocks, economic setbacks are there, economic setbacks, then social distance, social gap, social social communication, that means social gap in the social networking, communications, etc. So, this is a setback for the social connectedness, social relationship, that is also there. So, for absorbing, for facing these all kinds of natural shocks, how can we make our communities more resilient and sustainable? That is one thing. So, that is we must be very well prepared to face all these kind of natural disasters, and how can we reduce the intensity and frequency of these kind of disasters, not getting ourselves involved, not making ourselves the reason or the factors of man-made disasters, and taking care of the environment, so that we can reduce this negative impact of climate change. So, the next is that sustainable communities are again the inclusive community. The inclusive community takes into account now all sections of the persons, not only in terms of socioeconomic status, but in terms of age groups, in terms of like the who are the marginalized groups, who are the minorities, who are the vulnerable groups, like the children and the aged persons, they senior citizens, they are the vulnerable groups. Again, in terms of income, in terms of the economic market, also market services. So how this that means inclusive community means you have to, the society has to, sustainable society, they have to care for all groups of people, all stakeholders, all and all to serve their, to take care of their vulnerability, and look for their look forward to their, to protect them, to care for them. So it has to definitely, that means inclusive community means it cares for everybody, all the stakeholders. Then another is that sustainable communities are, yes, of course, they are competitive communities, in the sense that not just to maintain the cleanliness, not just to maintain conserve the resources, but to stay themselves as productive, in terms of in terms of their resources, in terms of their skills, in terms of their competencies, in terms of creating the jobs, in terms of sustainable growth and economy. So that is why, so how the this kind of things also, sustainable cities and communities also encourages, it also motivates and encourages the people to stay back with the to be productive, to be protective, to be caring, and to be creative, in the sense creating more jobs, more opportunities for everybody. But thing is that, but all these things also it focuses on the collective well-being. So collective well-being, community well-being, it's not just individuals development. So that we can minimize the gap, minimize the poor and rich gap, minimize the socio-economic gaps in the community. So that that means almost all the citizens, all the stakeholders are leading a very happy, prosperous, and the healthy life. So that is the main focus or the goal of the sustainable communities. So the next is that so that is why you can say the true eco city, sustainable city definitely will need to address the, so as we know, the environmental, social, environmental and economic impact of sustainability. So when we talk about sustainability society means automatically it takes into account these three aspects. Socially it should be, community should be sustainable, inclusive, etc., and economically viable, economical growth, prosperity is there, and environmentally also it is also very healthy, it is safe, it is sustainable. So then what are the characteristics of sustainable cities? Yes, as we have already discussed, public transportation. So public transportation should focus on minimizing the carbon footprints in terms of more uses of electric trolley buses, metro systems, underground railways, CNG, like in CNG, minimum CNG autos and the gases, how to minimize the carbon footprint. So that kind of vehicles and transport facilities we have to focus, we have to create. Similarly, walkable and the bikeable neighborhoods. If it is within the reach, how the citizens, how the customers, they can move into the market and for their day-to-day activities, either by going by a cycle or walking, or bikeable neighborhoods. That means within the nowadays with the motorcycles, two-wheelers. Again nowadays also two-wheelers are also coming up battery charged two-wheelers, cars, etc. So that is not only that, again sometimes if it is possible, in order to avoid the crowds, in order to avoid the traffic congestion, etc. So there should be separate ways and paths, like pedestrian, for the pedestrian bridges will be there. There should be bike path network, there should be urban grids, and for the micro mobility, like the subways, like the overhead walking breeze, walking bees, food breeze. So all these kind of facilities are also to be explored. So vehicle charging stations, they should be situated. They should be they should be established from within the approachable distance. That means in the city across the cities, in the very key places. So electric vehicles, hydrogen powered car, battery chargeable two-wheelers, etc. These are to be promoted, and also their charging stations should be established in the nearby areas. Solar farms, definitely solar energy, solar farms, how to Solar farms are the major, you can say major source of energy creation, energy supply, etc. supply. So, now the green buildings, nowadays we are also focusing more on a green buildings. So, what are the natures of the green buildings? Yet first thing is that smart heat and cooling system. Now, in the multi-storied buildings, now we are using the ACs and all kinds of the cooling systems. So, all these are also energy efficient system, like nowadays also the TVs, refrigerator and coolers, all kinds of that are starred. That means starred systems, in the sense minimum minimum energy consumptions, or energy efficient system. See, starting from our electricity bulbs to ACs to coolers to all the household amenities, even the washing machine, to all kinds of electrical gadgets and the amenities that we are using at home in the cities. So, our energy efficiency, as having the energy efficiency. So, how the green buildings should take into account the smart heating and cooling system with minimum energy consumption, then natural building materials, the raw materials, the infrastructure materials, that should be also very robust and resilient. Similarly, enhancing the ventilation and the insulation facilities, solar panels, green roofs, all these kind of things. So, green buildings. So, greenery approach is that eco-friendly approach. Eco-friendly as much as sustainable, as much as conservation of resources, as much as that means minimizing minimum pollution. So, that is how to focus on the green buildings. So, green buildings it is a very important part in the urban infrastructure and city planning. Then the food production. Nowadays, our agriculture also, we are focusing more on organic foods, vegetables, eco-friendly, agriculture, farming system. So, these are some of the key characteristics of sustainable cities. So, now I am concluding here. In the next class, we will continue with this. Thank you very much.